Hey TV fans, Bored now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 5 Episode 2. The episode is called Under the Twin Moons. Full spoilers from the start of this review as always. So to no one's surprise, this one was better than the first one, because really it wouldn't be hard to be better than the opening episode of this season, which was pretty shambolic really. So it's a more settled episode, more heading in the right direction. This is what the season's going to be, still with some of the pet peeves that really drag the show down and really makes me think then this season may not be as good as it could be. So, but it's a solid enough episode, I would say. So a couple of main things that are going on. We continue the search for Maul and Locke on these planets because they believe that there's a clue on this particular planet, and they're trying to catch up to it, a clue from the diary, before Maul and Locke get to it, so they're constantly playing catch up. And Saru goes on this mission with Michael, so it's a very personal mission. It's Saru's final mission before he goes off to his new diplomatic promotion and his love life. So this could be the last time we see Saru in the show, but it's still early in the season, so you're thinking maybe we'll see him at least once more. So, emotional episode for Saru and Michael as they reflect on their past, and they go on this mission together where it turns out they have to find an answer to unlock the force fields and these drones which are on these planets, which is a threat to them, and that requires help from Tilly back at base, and also from Raina, who has the other big storyline in this episode. You've also got Book, of course, involved, and more drama with him and Michael. But I'll start with the Raina stuff, actually, because it does sort of bookend the episode a little bit. So Raina is under trial at the start of this because of his actions at the end of the first episode, and he's under scrutiny because of causing his decision and how it caused the avalanche, or there's question over if he was justified in taking the route. And Michael has to appear to give evidence, and at first she's very cautious and diplomatic about saying anything too outlandish against Raina, and is defending him a little bit, saying he's an excellent captain and it was a very tough situation. But eventually she's almost, not exactly goaded, but she feels she has to say that he did act recklessly in that. And part of that is because he's being so like cavalier in the hearing, then she keeps whispering under breath, "You're not helping yourself," which is pretty amusing. But it's a decent enough scene. Like, Raina makes some arguments that we are at war potentially, or that war could break out at any moment. So he's a very old school captain in that sense, where he just does what needs to be done and is willing to risk all hell if it gets results, and is just very open about, hey, this is the world we live in, it's very volatile, and sometimes you have to go to extreme places. And the stuff with him and the, I forget the captain's, but like the officer's name now, the one we've had for a few seasons. But he and Raina has all this history which is brought up, which makes his decision in the episode tougher because he puts Raina on suspension. Early retirement is how he mentions it. So that stuff is a little bit weird because Raina's only been introduced at the start of this series and this season, and yet we're talking about all the history he has with the officer, which we haven't really seen. And because Raina's a new character, I'm not sure there's enough to really invest with there. So it doesn't feel like there's enough on that decision and on the plight of Rayna in a way. But by the end of the episode, he impresses Michael because it's actually his involvement helping Tilly and Adira get the answer to helping Saru and Michael on this planet. And it's then they have to hack in to the planet's overall system. They have to find out all about its history and the science behind that. So it's a decent enough scene. And Rayna is involved, and he has a certain way about him where he helps, partly because he's bored and he's sort of got nothing else to lose. And he's one of these characters where I think there is more of a morality to him than he lets on. Like he's willing to help them out in this scene, but he's not going to go the whole hog and say, yes, I support you. He kind of does it on his own terms, or at least that's what he portrays, which is what I'm saying. I think there's a little bit more humanity to him than he's actually letting on, but he won't fully admit that. So he helps them, which is almost step one in Michael being impressed with him. And then she goes to talk to him later after he's been put on her early retirement. And he does confess some regrets about the way he acted. And Michael says, well, why didn't you just say that in the first place? He says, because it wouldn't have made any difference. And he gives a whole speech, almost like advice to Michael. Then you've got to stick to your guns, you've got to make the tough decisions, and just be yourself, and don't be like a yes man or a yes woman in Michael's case, which is sort of funny because she has like lived her life a bit like that in many ways anyway. But he gives her that advice, and that impresses her because she's looking for a new number one. And she makes him the new number one. And he says, I'm not going to be a yes man. She says, that's what I'm banking on. That's what I'm looking for. So I do like that. Then Rayna, even though he goes against a lot of what you would maybe look for in that position, I do like that Michael sees that as a quality. Maybe partly because she's a little bit like that at times. But she's impressed and he is his own man and isn't afraid to go out on the limb. So she hires him as the new number one. And I'm excited about that because I do like that actor. I think he's very good in that sort of role. And we can get a little bit more into his character now that he's going to be a regular this season. So there's stuff with Book and then there's stuff on the mission, like I said. And this is my main problem with the episode, is all the drama, all the over dramatic dialogue, all like the grand speeches, and just how unsubtle it is, because like Book is analysing Locke and Moore and trying to get answers to them, and he's talking about how they're almost like, I can't remember how he describes them, like almost as outlaws or something like that. But at one point he just makes this comment to someone else about how I know someone else like that. And he's referring to Michael. And once again, it's this really on-the-nose bit of dialogue and a really heavy-handed scene. And this is one of my problems with this episode, is that really him and Michael cannot get over themselves for a few minutes. Like there's constant talk of their relationship, or there's this really heavy-handed, like where they're just hinting at it and it's just so obvious what they're talking about, and it's like, yeah, just put this aside. You've got time for drama later. Just get on with what you do and get on with the mission. Because then Michael, when she's on the mission with Saru, he's talking about it. So they're talking about the relationship with Book. And it's like, well, just get on with the mission. Because then Saru some of the stuff with Saru and Michael I do like, and they obviously have a bit of a history, so that stuff is well sold. And if this is going to be their last mission together, that makes sense, and they make a big deal of this stuff. But they just overdo it once again, because they have an emotional moment before they've even set off, which, okay, maybe that makes sense, because we're going into the field, and she tells him about this name, which apparently, I think it's Book or someone says he's got this name, Action Guy or something like that, which seems a little bit of a weird nickname for Saru, but maybe it's just almost comedic, because that's the opposite of what you would think of him. So they have this moment before they go into the field, but then during the mission they're constantly having these moments as well, and it's like, this isn't really the time, and you're dragging the scene down. Let's get on with the actual mission. So once again, it's a bit melodramatic, this episode, with the stuff with Michael and Book, and then there's, as I said, some of the stuff with Saru, even though it makes more sense because this is his last mission, that's a bit overdone. So in the end, they survive like these forces on the planet, but they're a bit slow getting to the thing before Moore and Locke. But they do unlock some data later on. There's some pretty decent problem solving in the episode, and they unlock the data, and the data reveals then there's 5 different planets that they've got to visit, 5 different maps. And that will lead them to the answer to their creation and to get into Maul and Locke. And that stuff is okay, because it at least sets out a structure for the season moving forward. My problem is it could turn out that things get a bit repetitive because of that, because I could see it being, oh, they're just going to another planet now. And it depends on the writing and how each episode is made distinctive. Sometimes in this show, like, each episode can just feel quite samey and once again quite action packed. And again, there's some frantic action in this, nowhere near as much as episode 1. But there is that danger then it could become quite repetitive. But at the very least, it does set out a structure for the season. And there's a bit with Booker and with Moore and Locke where he actually has like contact with them, virtual contact. And he tries to dissuade them, saying that diary, you don't understand its power, you can't handle its power, whereas it's much safer in Federation hands. And it's, I think it's Moore who's the girl, who's the one I prefer out of the two, but she says, like, we have each other and that's enough. And they don't listen to Book. And then Book, later on, when he's looking at footage of Moore, he, like, moves backwards in her age in, like, several years. Like, sees a younger version of her on the footage. And it turns out he's related to her, like she's his only living relative, and it's because he recognises a birthmark which he shares. So that's something which could be interesting. Fingers crossed that leads to them doing something a bit more interesting with Book, because I'm kind of getting fed up of the stuff with Michael at the moment. It's just very repetitive, and it's like they either need to get them back together properly, or they just need to cut out all this forced drama, because they're just running through the same things over and over again, and it's not really that interesting. But there's some potential in this episode for the season moving forward. This thing with Book could, and Moore could, give him something else to do. So that's Star Trek Discovery episode 2 of season 5. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and support me at patreon.com/boardnow for just $1 a month. keep watching TV and Star Trek, and I'll see you next time.